chapter 4, The Mount of God, in the book Through the Mist. And it was the spirit who gave it to the medium R.J. Lees, preferred to remain nameless, although there is talk in the book that they called him Fred. So I'd like to begin with a prayer to Fred. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for sending us the messages by Fred. And thank you, Fred, for the Spirit, Fred, for opening your heart and telling us what you experience in heaven. And hopefully this can clear up any misconceptions that people here have on earth about heaven, so that your wishes may be fulfilled. And in this cusp of the Christmas season, we want to thank you for all your love and charity, and thank you for bringing us this book. Amen. Now, before I begin, if you are interested in Spiritism, I recommend highly you actually download the PDF of the Spirits book, which is the codified by Allan Kardec. Here is the book, the Spirits book by Allan Kardec. Just type in any search engine, Allan Kardec space PDF, and you'll find all of his books on PDF. And it's fascinating reading. He fashioned 1,019 questions, and he gave those to mediums throughout Europe. And if they didn't answer the same or similar, he did not use them. So there's many books out there that channel spirits, and you don't really know who's verified those spirits, the level of those spirits. But Allan Kardec codified the Spirits book under the organization of the Spirit of Truth, as promised to us in the New Testament by Jesus. So this is one that is just fascinating. And to me, when I read it, it just said, okay, yes, now I understand. Now I understand what happened to me, what it means, who am I on earth, where am I going, and what the spirit world is about. And I can't emphasize enough how it changed my life. Now, if you'd like to beforehand, which I'd recommend, if you want to understand kind of the basic tenets of Spiritism, you can go to my blog site, nwspiritism.com. Let me bring that up. nwspiritism.com, www.nwspiritism.com, and download a free PDF version, Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation. That's in PDF. If you don't wish to read it in PDF, it's in Kindle for 99 cents, paperback, and in Audible format. So hopefully I'm making it very easy for people to get. I also have, to remind everybody, the Spirits book on Audible format on my blog also, as well as this YouTube channel, which you can go to the playlist, the Spirits book, and individually, chapter by chapter, I will read the whole Spirits book. Okay. And let's start. Let me bring this into the stream. And this is chapter 4, The Mount of God. Now, let me set the stage very quickly. The spirit, who may remain nameless, but I believe his name is Fred. They kind of had people call him Fred. He had rescued a boy on a busy street in London in the end of the 19th century, I'm sorry. So it was horses and wagons. So he went, got the boy, and he woke up on this grassy knoll with the boy in his arms. So he and the boy died. He had no recollection of that. He was helped by a spirit, a woman who he'd helped, who I think died of tuberculosis. And she took him to a certain place. And then he met Erasmus, another spirit, says, okay, I'm going to take you the rest of the way. So he had just, all of this, the first chapters, he's just talking about, I'm on this grassy knoll. I don't know what's going on. And he followed a path, and he had a robe on, and it was a certain color. Didn't really know what that meant yet. And now he was at the top point, and then where he could see the grassy knoll and the mist beyond, and now he's going to go down. So let me start. The Mount of God, chapter 4. Eusimos led me down the hill towards the point from which the different roads radiated, and which was necessarily a common meeting place for the multitudes continually coming and going. These are all people who are dying and passing over from the spirit world, and then the people coming was through from the earth from that point, and going is being led by spirits to where they're going to be, all decided by the law of affinity. I'll keep reading. There was no visible reason why this should be so, no barrier or hindrance to their passing directly from or to any particular road or point they wish to reach. No gate at which they must gain admission or examination to prove their qualifications. And of course, he says that because in his mind, he should have, you know, back in where what he believed, he was a Protestant. I'm not sure what denomination, but he expected to, to have this inquiry of, okay, can you come here or not? And none of that happened to him. That's why he was so fascinated. Yet by mutual consent, all persons gravitated towards that common center in their passage either way. I grew momentarily more interested in my new and overpowering surroundings as every fresh thought and scene impressed itself upon me. It was while I descended into this busy, ever-changing, joyous throng that I for the first time fully comprehended the fact that death lay out of sight behind us, and as I did, I so stopped to try and realize all I had passed from, what I had passed to, and the incomprehensible change of circumstances into which I had been carried. While yet myself, if I still remained the same, every single incident in which I became acquainted appeared to self-contain a heaven, and more of it than I had power to imagine on earth. Yet each was so designed as to proclaim it but an installment of our home where the word would be heard breathed from the lips of an infinite Father in the perfect court of love, the echoes of which will linger on for aye in the vast expanse of that eternal dome beneath which we shall ultimately find our rest. Now, let me stop there for a second. And I think the key sentence for here is, while yet myself, I still remain the same. And this is the mundane truth of dying. When you die, you are the same person. You're the same nice person. You're the same anxious person. You're the same stressed person. You could be, very intelligent or just average if you want to be. Your spirit brain will take over slowly, but at first you just feel like yourself. You feel like yourself. You touch yourself. You feel solid. And if you don't believe you're dead, and which happens quite a lot, and you try to go home, and you say, "Hey, I'm still alive," and it's like nobody listens to you. They don't even see you. And finally the realization will come. Many times you'll have a spirit helper, just like the spirit had, say, "Okay, come on, follow me. You're dead, but this is a great place." And of course, he deserved that because he was a very nice person. He went through the slums of London, helping many, many people. So you don't become an angel. You don't become, and if you don't go to heaven, you don't become a demon. So to speak, you may come to that state if you're not careful. Now, where am I? I went down too far. I hit the wrong thing. Hold on 1 second. See. Okay, I think I'm back. I'm where I should have been. Okay. Gotta watch when I click on this. Sorry about that. So let me keep reading. The scene before me was one of the chief items in the earth idea of heaven. And since we'd left time as well as death behind, again, this is exactly what Spiritism says. There is no time. There are states, right? And there are occurrences and events, but there's no time. It doesn't tick. Nothing decays. You don't grow older. None of that. And that's why when people in mediums meetings, they ask spirits like, when is this supposed to happen? And they expect them to know the exact time and date or everything. And it's like, and you don't understand how difficult it is for spirits to translate where they are now into what the time is on earth. That's been past. They don't remember. They don't even remember their past life's names sometimes. It's just not important to them anymore. So this is why it's difficult. You can't, don't expect the spirit to have perfect recall of time. Okay. The scene before me is one of the chief items in the earth idea of heaven. And since we left time as well as death behind, there was no reason why I should not stay to study the realization of that upon which every soul had so frequently meditated. My companion saw my desire, and standing silently at my side, seemed to add by his sympathy to the intense enjoyment I there experienced. How many conquests over death I witnessed! The old enemy of man would have been routed 1,000 times if he had marshaled his forces there. Husband and wife, parent and child, brother and sister, friend and friends, meeting after intervals more or less prolonged, with the full consciousness that they were now beyond the parting. Hands rudely torn apart in the chill of the mist resumed their clasp with the knowledge that the death's paralysis was powerless to intervene again. Eyes on earth sightless now feasted their hungry vision upon those who had guided them in their darkness. Ears strained to listen to their mother's voice were now entranced with the sweetness of that music. Tongues long silent poured forth their gratitude, and arms, which had been powerless, closed in the rapt embrace of love. In all that joy, never occurred to me that I stood alone there without such welcome from those I knew. The yearning desire for one for whom my life had been a constant groaning never once possessed me. I was so happy in the contemplation of the bliss of others. I had no idea that I was singular in my condition. And this is where a theme goes over and over in Spiritism, and even less in NDEs, near-death experiences, that your past relatives, family, etc., friends, are there to meet you. And they know, they have been notified that so-and-so was coming over at this location. Now, how does this happen? And how can they meet you so quickly, especially like if you had a sudden death? Well, first of all, everything happens so slowly on earth, it's easy. But then again, you can move by the speed of thought. And so a thought probably was sent to that person, that family member, saying, Fred is coming over, for instance. And that person and they would send that thought, and they'd send a picture of where that was. And so in their mind, they could say, okay, I'm going there. And they would go there at the speed of thought, not the speed of light. That's not a speed limit in the spirit world. It just shows you how complex the spirit world is. Think about that. You travel by the speed of thought. Think about what that means. Neither was I. I'll keep reading. Had I not a friend, though unknown to me before, was yet dear to me already, as if he had been a brother? Had I not been more blessed than many in the reception Helen had accorded me? And that was a woman who he had met in the hospital as she was dying, and told her that he would make sure her brothers and sisters would be okay. And in the assembly of friends from whom I had just parted for an interval, I was by no means a stranger in a strange land, but a favored son who felt free to wander at will over his father's wide domain. Favored indeed, for the privilege which was mine, I soon discovered was not the lot of all to enjoy. There are two sides to every picture, and it was not long before I found a reverse even to that which lay before me. I was not alone, but I soon saw one and then another, who labored to pass unnoticed through that joyous throng, anxious to avoid recognition, full of fear and terrified by apprehension lest their presence should be detected by individuals from whom they shrank. In such a glance at such poor creatures, I received a revelation and learned a truth more empathetic than any argument could have presented to my mind. The relative positions of heaven and hell were practically illustrated, and I realized that in no geography can heaven be found, but in the ocean of a righteous soul. It forms an island with its coast rock bound and quiet haven where no temptress roll, and one breath of sin upon God's throne would tell and start the conflagration of a hell. And so he is seeing. So heaven, it depends how you want to see things, right? People like to see geometric shapes, and they like to see the earth as a round ball and heaven being up above the earth. The lower zone, the Spiritists say, is at the crust of the earth to the lowest level of heaven, and then the dark abyss, which you could consider purgatory. There is no eternal punishment. There's no hell, but there is purgatory, pretty bad place. Would be below the earth. Now, of course, you can describe it that way, but in practicality, these are all constructed environments, and they all exist in a logical environment within the spirit universe, spirit universes. But it helps for us as humans in the way we think to look at them as physical phenomena with boundaries and so forth. But then in actuality, they are places of collective minds and the law of affinity, where like goes to like. And now these creatures that he saw kind of shrinking and walking around, they were people that by themselves had climbed up out of the lower zone and were trying to reach a heavenly location. Now they shouldn't shrink because they were allowed to go that far. They're not going to be, you know, searched and stopped and said, no, you can't go any farther. You're a horrible person. No, they'll be helped. And then now, if they are not really ready to be there, they may be shown, I think this is a better place for you. And then they will just feel naturally. If they go too high, they will feel naturally that that environment, they can't stand it. So if you're a spirit and you go to the next level of what a spirit is, and the spiritists tell the Reverend G. Vowell, there's like 10 levels of heaven. Other people say there's other levels of heaven. These people said, we'll just use this. Some says 7, some says 3. But the fact remains is if you go to a higher level that you're not ready for, you feel the brightness of the light in the atmosphere, you just can't take it. And you go back down. And that is your limit. According to your spiritual maturity, you can roam at your level or below, but you can't go higher. It's just too difficult for you. Okay, I'll carry on. My attention had been particularly attracted by greetings passing between two who were evidently brother and sister, the former of whom had but just arrived. The fervent ardor of their youthful embraces, the happy contentment upon the face of the girl, the gratitude and satisfaction so visible in the boy, were very beautiful to look upon. As I watched their joy, participating in their happiness, I was conscious of asking myself when my capacity of bliss would reach its limit, and whether it was not possible for me to presently to awake and find that all had been a dream. With this, as if to give some weight to such suggestion, my eye fell upon the woman, robed in a dress of reddish brown, who watched that boy and girl with looks and feelings I never thought possible to find in such a place. So we have a question here. Sounds like the pressure of the ocean when diving. And yes, that is a good metaphor, is that as you are a higher spirit, you are a greater ratio of energy to matter. And as, let's say, as a human, our ratio of matter is very high. And then when you go down as a spirit in the lower zone or the dark abyss, the purgatory, your ratio of energy to matter isn't, is higher than being a physical human, of course, but you're in a different plane, right? And then a higher spirit is much more energy than matter. And in fact, when a higher spirit goes into a plane where a lower spirit is, many times the lower spirit cannot even see the higher spirit. Of course, we can't see any low or high spirits because we don't have that sensitivity. Remember, Spiritism told us we can only see about 1/8 of what is around us. We're in our diving suits, if you want to keep using that metaphor, and we have like blinkers on. And why do we have all this, like, this compartmentalization of our senses? And why are we in this primitive matter? And the reason we're in this primitive state is it sets us up so we can be more vulnerable to stimuli, emotional stimuli coming and going, and that way we can change our basic character and our personality for the better. We can rip out our primitive emotions and replace those with advanced emotions. Okay, let me carry on. In her eyes, the fires of terror blazed. From her face, the perspiration rolled in beads of agonizing fears. Her limbs were palsied with dread, and she shrank and pushed to make her escape before they recognized her presence. Once and again, she darted away from the spot on which they stood, as occasion offered her a chance to achieve her wish. But inexorable fate was fast upon her heels, and seemed to blast every hope almost before its birth. Each fruitless attempt but left her nearer to that happy couple, who were conscious of her until the crisis came, who were unconscious of her until the crisis came, and the terror-stricken wretch who was forced upon their attention in her frantic efforts to escape. Now, she's probably there because the spirit world sent her there. She had done something bad to that couple, but now she's got to experience what happened. Let's find out. No one in all that crowd showed any sign of sympathy for her in her distress. No hand was outstretched to help her clear a way by which that unpleasant encounter so could easily have been avoided. She was, in all that throng, so completely alone that I felt more than once as if I must go forward and render assistance of which she stood so much in need. Yet something held me back, told me that things were better as they were, and bade me wait and watch. And that is something that you hear over and over and over again in Spiritist literature. Is as the spirits first, and this is like in the books of Andre Louise and in this book too, is their first impression, like, help this poor spirit. And the higher spirit says, no, just wait. There's a lesson they have to learn. It's like with a child. It's like you could stop your child from doing everything, but you've got to let them make stupid mistakes because, they're not going to listen to you all the time. They got to somehow actually make stupid mistakes. And again, here, these people like us, we have to learn from those mistakes. Let's keep reading. Speechless and motionless, the terror-stricken woman stood like a craven felon waiting for the law's decree. The boy shrank back, but the girl, with a look of infinite pity beaming on her face, stepped forward and did what no one else had done. She, who might the vantage best have took, found out the remedy, cleared the needed way, and if she spoke a word, it was but of pity and compassion. And as she pointed where the woman could escape, with this came strength to move, as the culprit, for such I'd felt convinced she was, darted away. I saw a brilliant flash of light shoot from the eye of her benefactress, which struck and shone upon her troubled breast like a resplendent jewel. Did you see that flash? Asked my companion, whose attention had evidently been attracted by the same incident. Yes, what was it? That's the girl's forgiveness for some great wrong the woman had done. That light will remain with her until she has paid the penalty of her sin. When she will be enabled to realize its meaning, it will have a powerful influence in working her salvation. So that flash, and that flash coming out of that woman, is even talked about in John's Revelations, where he said a lightning or a bright sword came out of the mouth, right? As this great Lord gave orders to all the angels. And this is backed up by Spiritism. It says that spirits communicate, and there's more ways in this, but let's talk about the two main ways they communicate. Mind to mind, and then also they will flash pictures. And maybe short little movies, I don't know. And so when they flash, when they send pictures to you, like a little flash comes out of their mouth, and she's probably close enough that he probably could see the whole thing. And so that image in her mind will stay with her, and it's probably that image will make her feel like she's been forgiven, but she can't process it yet because she's probably in such a stressful state. She must have done something bad to that too, probably poisoned or murdered them or something. And then she was allowed to be there just to have that little stimuli. So you're still learning, even in the spirit world. And then people in the dark abyss, which is a type of purgatory and lower zone, they're still learning. In the spirits in heaven, you're still learning. Now, and you can change your character and your personality in those places, but it's more effective on earth because we are so exposed. Because in heaven, it's comfortable, it's calm, you feel good, you're with good people. And if you have little character flaws, there's not much cause there to rip those out because they're more hidden. So it's a good idea to be incarnated again on earth and have those exposed by trials, and then you get rid of them. It's not an easy job rewiring your brain to be a nice person in all circumstances. I haven't gotten there yet. Okay. Um, I'll carry on. Poor soul, I ejaculated. Where will she go? How sad it seems that in all this multitude there was no one to meet her, no one to give her advice or to offer a word of consolation. Let me see where I'm. Okay, 36. It would be a mockery to do so at present, replied Eusimos, and you will not find any of that here. Only those who are met can be welcome. But if you watch her, you'll see where she will go. Are you not afraid she'll go wrong in her ignorance? I asked. Can man live beneath the ocean waves, or fishes consort with the eagle in its sunward flight? He answered. Neither can she take a place for which she is unfitted. We need no angels with flaming swords to guard our ways. See, again, he 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 implies that naturally, through the law of affinity, she can't go the wrong way because she just will be she'll just be affected by that and say, "Oh no, I can't. I can't stand this. I'll go the other way." But see, I cried, she is going wrong. Her dress is by no means the color of that road she is taking. Watch her, he calmly responded. I did so. In her eagerness to escape from that dreaded presence, as she cleared the crowd, she darted heedlessly into the first road, which presented itself, exerting all her strength to put a distance between herself and the girl she had wronged. Her idea seemed to be that safety lay in flight, so all her energies were called in the force to make that flight as rapid as possible. Her course, however, was not long continued. Was it her strength that failed, or did she merely pause to take her breath? I knew not. Then I saw her reel, as if grown faint from her exhaustion and excitement. Reel, reel, and reach out for some support, but none was there. Then she turned, and though at such a distance in that clear atmosphere, I could see an added agony of pain written upon her face. Something forced her to return, forced her to reapproach that form for which she had tried to flee. A second and yet a third attempt she made, but all to no avail. The same inexorable power compelled her to return until she entered on a path which by its color I could see was right. Down this she passed without a trace of effort, and soon was lost to sight beneath our feet. Poor soul, I murmured. Where will that road lead her? It abounds in the subterranean caverns, into what but little light can penetrate. In these places, such as she rushed to hide themselves from the presence of those they have injured, and who fear they will follow to torment them. Terror makes their hell. They know not who or what is near them. They feel that every soul they come in contact has either come to take revenge, and thus each becomes a source of terror to the other. There she must stay until some spirit in a less miserable condition can gain sufficient of her confidence to induce her to leave those dens for a less wretched abode, to this being the first step towards the happiness it is possible for every soul to reach. But we will pass along. So, this is shows. So she went to her own level. Her conscience. Now, this is why it's so important to start following your conscience. And I know it's hard because, you know, since we've been adolescents, we've been very good at rationalizing away why we don't have to follow our conscience. But this is why we need to reverse that, and most people do when they're in their late teens or 20s or whatever. And we need to really start following our conscience and not let the pressures of society do what we think is wrong. Therefore, and this is embedded in everyone. God has embedded our conscience in every incarnate. No matter who you think, if someone's a psychopath or whatever they are, and you say, well, they have no conscience. Well, they do, but they don't listen to them, and that will affect them in the spirit world. And they may take many, many lives for them to start listening to their conscience, but they will eventually. So she will learn that. And there's another story in my book, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, about a sister who was trying to get help from these other spirits in this outpost for her brother. And she'd been looking for her brother. Her brother had died, and she'd been looking for her brother to try and help him come out of this lower zone. Now, this sister is a wonderful person. The brother poisoned her. He murdered her because she had found out he was going to do some sort of coup. He was a high-born aristocrat and was going to try and overthrow the present regime. She said, no, you're not going to do that. And he was afraid she would talk, and he killed her. but she still loved him. Now, that is love. So she went and she found him, and he said, and when he found her, he says he can't believe that someone so nice would still love him and help him. And he felt truly humbled. And when he talked to one of the spirit next to him, and he was a simple man, but a high spirit, but he was, because he was simple and humble. He said, "Thank you for helping my sister. And I apologize because when I was on earth, I thought I was so high born, I would not even listen to you or think you important at all. But now I know differently, that the level of spirit is what is important, not what your wealth or where you think you were born into on earth." And in the works of Spiritism, you'll find out that there will be people who were, shoveling coal into steamships, and when they die, they'll be teaching these famous people how to behave in heaven, because they were morally superior. So that is why you go through life and you don't envy. There's no reason to envy. You are you actually should feel pity for some of these people who have too much, because when you're rich, that's a hard trial. There's too many people who will do whatever you want, and boy, that's tough when you have a lot of sycophants, just letting you get away with murder, sometimes literally. Okay, let me finish. Let me carry on. I mean, for some time, our progress was not a rapid one, as my companion met numbers of his fellow messengers and others, all of whom had a word of welcome for me, and the many interesting features of my surroundings prompted me to make frequent pauses that I might the better understand them. When at length we had reached the outskirts of the multitudes and we started upon our projected mission, I was glad to hear Eusimos refer to the incident which had interested and yet so perplexed me. "I see," he began, "that you are unable to reconcile that woman's presence here with the simple law of love governing this life." "Yes, I am," I answered, "and should be glad if you'll explain it to me." And this is where a lot of newly arrived spirits who are completely involved in the complete love think you should just completely love everyone. And yes, you should love them, but then people need tough love. They need to learn. Let's see what he says. "I will, and then you'll see that the Lord is good unto all, and his tender mercies are all over his works. And for myself, I do not see where I could find a more forcible illustration of it than in such a case as to that which your attention has been called." "How so?" he answered. "When she made her escape, you saw her take the path on which we are now walking. Notice how every person she met passed by without speaking or pointing out that she was wrong. Now I ask you to mark the buoyancy, the exhilaration, the happiness and peace which increases with every step we take, and say, if you can, why it was that she turned back from such a path of her own free will." "I cannot tell," I answered. "It was simply because that which is a source of increasing enjoyment to you was a cause of pain to her. She was rushing into an unnatural condition as pronounced as that of a fish out of water. Of her own free will and deliberate act, she fitted herself on earth to take a certain place in this life, the spirit life, and she cannot, even if she would, assume any other without enduring the pain which naturally ensue. She had made her choice, and love intervenes to save her from the additional torment that is the legitimate outcome of her own acts. This is fully manifest in the provision of that place to which she has now gone. She will not be abandoned and left altogether to the mercy of those who will be her associates there. Others in a happier condition will go down to such as she and tell them to hope, encourage them to repent, endeavor to induce them to come away, and finally lead them on the way to happiness." "Then she has not got into hell where the fire is not quenched?" I ask. "The fire of hell is one of those metaphorical phrases misunderstood on account of its literal interpretation," he responded. So let's talk about that before we get into that. So this woman had committed a wrongful deed, and this is what Spiritism does not like to call things sin. They like to call them wrongs, because people have different comprehension and definitions of sin. So, and wrong is when you know you're wrong when you violate your conscience. That's the simplest way I can say it. So she committed wrongs, and she, and in her own mind, she is punishing herself, and she's going down to that lower zone where it's not nice, is not pleasant, and because she thinks that's where she belongs, where other people like her, and they will, by me treating her as she treated others, she will find out. It's the opposite of the golden rule, right? You're treated as you treated others, right? That she will find out that that is not what she should have done. And then yet she'll have spirits there to talk to her and help her out. Now, people come and talk to me and say, well, doesn't God love us? Aren't we forgiven for our sins? And it's the whole thing where, like, if you ask for forgiveness on your sins on your deathbed, you're forgiven. Well, yes, you're forgiven, but you haven't forgiven yourself. It's like your kindergartner does something stupid, writes on the walls or paints the walls, and yeah, you love that little kindergartner, but they still have to stand in the corner. And that's, they have to learn not to write on the walls or run out into the street or whatever they have to learn. So hence, you're not, yes, you are forgiven. Yes, you are loved, but you have to change. You have to pay for your wrongs because you yourself need to forgive yourself of these, and your conscience is going to literally review over and over and over of what you've done. And this poor woman is going to review that and feel terrible and live in a terrible, not a good place. But at some point in time, she'll be taught how to forgive herself for that, and that she will be allowed to incarnate again so that she can pay for her past wrongs. And you can think, well, God, that's kind of a harsh punishment. But what that is the fact that it is helping you completely reform and change your inner character and your inner personality. And this is why on earth we need to take the chance to really rewire our thoughts, stop malicious gossip and all these other things. This is why we need to do that. So let me carry on. Will you explain it to me as you understand it? With pleasure. And in doing so, I'll use the illustration you are most familiar with. It was said of Jesus, he shall baptize with the Holy Ghost and with fire. Of himself he said, I came to send fire on the earth, and man is assured that our God is a consuming fire. Do you understand these to be as literal as the fires of hell? Certainly not, I replied. But why not? What authority is there for making any distinction? I'm at a loss to answer you, I replied, other than it is in accordance with traditional custom to do so. It is a creedal necessity, he answered, and this is the great source of so much confusion, contradiction, and spiritual ignorance. The word of God is spirit as well as truth, and must ever be interpreted by the spirit, not the letter. That being merely the form in which the spirit finds expression, as the mortal body is but the organ of expression for the soul. The fire of the spirit is love. Therefore, to say that God is a consuming fire is but another way of declaring that God is love. Now, love in its debased form becomes passion, and if unrestrained, will speedily burst all bounds and leave a man the prey to his own devouring lust, with all the evil in his nature contributing fuel to the flames. When such a one is severed from the body and forced into this state of existence, where can he go? You have seen such a case which does not present anything like such aspects of depravity. Yet it was torture for her to stand where we are now. How much more would it be so for such a man as I describe? Even the very place to which that woman has gone would be intolerable to him. But still he must not be punished in revenge. There's no such thing as revenge. There's only edification. Therefore God has formed an abode congenial to such a nature, where, for the time being, he can plunge in his mad frenzy into the ocean of his unsubdued passions, and be tormented in the gathering the harvest of the seeds he has sown, while the unquenchable fire will burn and work its purpose. But in that word unquenchable, our Father's love is again made manifest. since the fire can only burn up the shaft. In other words, the time will come when the lust and passion will be consumed. Then the wheat shall be gathered into the garner, and the soul will come out from their ordeal as gold well refined. But the sanctified fire of love will still be burning in that soul, which will thus be saved from the very uttermost. He goes, do you know this, I ask eagerly, or do you only hope it will be so? We know it. It is the one great law of life that you will find everywhere in operation here. It should be so on earth, but the multitude of the words of men have become the grave of knowledge. So let's talk about this for a second before I carry on. When a spirit is in the lower zone or the dark abyss, which is purgatory, and they finally find out that they want to cast off that their other preconceptions of being, mean, sarcastic, envious, just not nice people, they can start walking up, and maybe they'll have help, right? Spirits will guide them and help them come up. They will learn, they will feel this pain, this immense pain as they go, and that's really is the wrongs they have done being burnt off, and as a kind of a metaphorical way of saying it, they will be burnt off, but it will be painful to walk up those stairs, right? Up the hill to heaven, into a better place. And they don't go all at once. They'll go into outposts, and they'll be taught, and they will be supported and put back to health, and they'll go up a little bit more. Gradually they will go. And that's really what it is they start leaving behind what they've done wrong in the past, and they feel the pain of that wrong, and that wrong will loop in their mind, and that finally, as they go up, they'll kind of burn out, and they'll understand it better. It won't be so sharp to them. I'll carry on. And the light of inspiration has been vanquished in the darkness of such a sepulchre. You will not find much preaching here, as you are used to understand the word. With us, to preach is to act, and all action has love for its incentive, since we have practically learned that he who dwells in love dwells in God, and God in him. And that is true. You're not going to, when higher spirits talk to you, for some who are mediums out there, they don't say, oh, you've got this misconception, or you've got this misconception, and these are, and so on and so forth. They'll just lay out some information for you and kind of let you understand. They're not going to, it's like when I was talking about current Christian prophets, and when I hear them talk about heaven, and I hear, I don't know if that's right, but I do know that they're not going to say, oh, sorry, you're wrong about that point. There is reincarnation, because they don't believe in it, so they're not going to be told that, hey, you're wrong about that. There is reincarnation. No, they're going to let them figure that out. Just like Edgar Casey was a staunch Catholic, or very religious. I don't know if he's Catholic now, but he didn't believe in reincarnation until he kept having, understanding about all these past lives people had. And, well, looks like there is reincarnation. Now, he could have been told by spirits a long time before, but they let him come to his own conclusion. So you're not going to be preached to and have, from that sermon with, fire and brimstone, like you're going to go to hell if you don't believe in this. That's not what they're going to do. That's not what Spiritism does. It says, here's information, make of it what you want. Okay, let me carry on. Oh, what a gospel of love you proclaim, I cried. What music it would be to earth. With such a message I can well understand that love never faileth. The gospel we declare is that which was given to men, and is peculiarly fitted for the earth condition. I now have another question to ask on a point that as yet appears to be at variance with your universal law of love. Let me hear it, my brother responded. How do you reconcile its application with that woman being allowed to enter with and see the joy of happier persons? I inquired. You imagine it has a tendency to increase her punishment, he rejoined. I fail to see how it can be otherwise. I am perfectly willing to admit, but first of all, you must remember that the way you came is the usual way of admission, and that whatever punishment is endured is the natural consequences of deliberate sin. As things done in ignorance or without intention exact no penalty in the judgment of the mist. But those who have sinned with deliberate intent or culpable negligence, in many cases following the same course for years, stifling the voice of conscience, Remember that. And crushing out their spiritual life, receive their just reward and punish. And it must necessarily be that their pain is increased as they realize what might have been under other and better circumstances. But might not that additional pain be saved them, I ask? No, God never turns aside to avoid the consequences of man's folly. But on the other hand, even that pain you so much regret is permitted by that same law of love. Although she is at present unconscious of it, that woman has gained one point of information which will give her hope and consolation presently, that which she could not have learned had she not had that unpleasant experience. What is that, I asked? She knows that there is no gate at which an angel is standing to keep her back from the way of life, and will presently be brought to understand that the only obstacle in the way of her happiness lies within herself. When she is able to recognize this, will become a powerful incentive to improve her condition. It will teach her that her punishment has been to purify and not vindictively inflicted. So again, we have to remember, in our episodes of life, we're not being punished. It's everything we go through is edifying. It may feel to us like it's punishment, but it's instructive. That's why when things happen to you, like, oh, your car got stolen, or someone stole from you, or you lost 100,000 in the stock market, and you go, oh my God, I'll never get that money back again. Think that, okay, what it felt like to lose that money. It didn't feel good. And you probably made someone else lose money back in a previous life. It will teach her that her punishment has been to purify and not vindictively inflicted. It will be a text upon which her teachers will build 100 arguments until she learns that even in her dark condition, she has not been forsaken, but though she knew it not, the hand of God was guiding her. Thank you, I said. As you expound them, I can understand how the tender mercies of God are over all his works. But now I have another difficulty. Okay, so I will stop there because we will, almost come to the end of our time. And so I hope this is interesting to people. And if you'd like to learn more about, what is all of this, and what is heaven and what does it mean, I recommend you read my book, Heaven and Below, book 1 of Spiritism, the Spirit World Revealed to an Anglican Vicar. Of course, you can, I'll have the links to that down below in the description. And you can also, of course, find it on my blog, nwspiritism.com. And that's just book 1. I have book 2, Spirits in the Spirit Universe. And then book 3 is How We Are Guided by Spirits. Let me bring that one up, which tells you how you're guided by your guardian angel, how the future of Earth is going to be, what your future is at some other higher level planet. And it kind of goes through, this is thousands of years, tens of thousands of years to get to. We do know that starting in the year 2057, we will start really the phase of a planet regeneration, and that will last for 7,000 years. So things will get better. Don't despair in your life. If you're having a crummy Christmas season or a crummy Thanksgiving, just know that the episodes you've gone through were edifying. It may not seem so. It's like kids don't like punishment, and of course none of us do, but they will help you. And this life on earth is temporary, and it's all meant for you to rewire your brain and come out a better, more calm, loving, giving, charitable, honest, and fraternal person. And then when you bring those wonderful attributes to heaven, you will rise in heaven, and your next life will be much better. So I want to say, everyone, thank you, and